Hello everyone and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. This week, one of the most important, impressive voices of music history has its birthday. Frank Sinatra would have turned 110 this week. Now that's something we should celebrate. And I'm going to celebrate it with a top 10 video with the best albums by Frank Sinatra. So, without further ado, just let me kick off this list. I'm going to be kicking it off with a record that really fits the time of year perfectly. Frank Sinatra's Christmas album. Now, I'm not just putting this at the 10th position because it is almost Christmas and I just did a Christmas video earlier this week. No, I'm putting it out there because I genuinely think this is one of his strongest records. Not only because, for me, like seldom other Christmas albums, this one paints a picture of a season with every particular song. Opening with this gorgeous swinging version of Jingle Bells, going into the Christmas song, Mistletoe and Holly, I'll Be Home for Christmas, which does a beautiful, spot-on rendition of that. And you can hear the complete control, the ease in keeping his breathing at the right tempo, the way he spreads out the air and make it all sound calm, warm, and comfortable. So well in that I'll Be Home for Christmas. Also in his Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Now, these songs, they sound so easy and comfortable, but they ask for a lot of vocal technique, which is so bizarre if you realize that the result basically is that it's so calm, soothing, warm, and feels like coming home. Now, side one here has the cheerful Christmas songs. And the idea was to put those on side one and side two to give it the old Christian Christmas carols. With the first Noel, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. I really love his rendition of that song. O Little Town of Bethlehem, Adeste Fidele, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear, which astonishing version, and Silent Night. All conducted by Gordon Jenkins. Now, this is such a strong, warm season opener. Something Sinatra could be very, very proud of. And for me, Christmas is not the same without listening to this record. At number 10, Frank Sinatra's Christmas album. At number 9, Come Fly With Me, Frank Sinatra, and conducted by Billy May. This is the first collaboration with Billy May, and it's released in 1958. Actually, George Martin, the famous Beatles producer, visited the sessions during the recording of this famous album. And he wrote down in his biography that he noted that Frank Sinatra didn't actually enjoy the cover of this record very much when Capitol showed him the first drawing of it. Thing is, there's something, this is a TWA airplane, and Sinatra was upset because he said, well, it's so clear that it's a TW airplane, this must be some kind of commercial. Did anybody receive money from that specific company? Well, the record company got its way, and this is how it was released. And I'm pointing here, but you can see it more clear here. Nevertheless, I think this is one of the brighter looking album covers for Sinatra, and as a matter of fact, I think this is one of the most bright, up-tempo, swinging, cheerful records that Sinatra did. Funnily and interestingly, what I'm holding here is a Capitol full-dimensional stereo, and although the stereo version was not released at the time of its release, at 1958, they released the mono one. Capitol back then was already working with making a mono and a stereo mix at the same time. So both are original dedicated mixes from that moment. It sounds really, really great. I love this record. At number 9, Come Fly With Me. At number 8, well, a completely different tone from Come Fly With Me, but around the same area of Sinatra. This is, at number 8, No One Cares. This is considered a direct sequel to Who Are You? Which I think is one of Sinatra's best records also, but 10 is 10, so you have to make decisions. This one was recorded and arranged by, it's not recorded by, but it's arranged by Gordon Jenkins. Love those collaborations. Critics called this his saddest and darkest album. And Sinatra said about it, I think it will mean a lot to people. People who know how it is when no one cares. In a certain way, this record felt very personal. And the photo of the cover was actually shot in Sinatra's own Beverly Hills restaurant. If you put this on, there is indeed a dark and gloomy mood. But if somebody can get you through the dark and gloomy mood and give you a sense of understanding and making it acceptable that the dark and gloomy mood is at the moment what belongs in your life, I think it is Frank Sinatra, and that is quite the job. At number 8, No One Cares. At number 7, this is one of my most recent Sinatra discoveries. Songs for Young Lovers. And as you may see, this is indeed not a 12-inch album. This is one of those early 10-inch albums because this comes from 1954. Later on, they made reissues with a longer track list, but this is the original 8 tracks album. I think 8 tracks is sufficient for an album. And honestly, the way Sinatra builds this one, we are talking about some gorgeous set of songs. Right before Sinatra switched to Capitol to record his albums, he was inspired and changed his sound because he was doing a lot of shows in Las Vegas nightclubs. He was becoming more mature. He performed in the Riviera and at the Sands, and he wanted to take that live vibe into the studio album. Now, he would usually work with about 8 musicians back then, but for this album he did add some. So there are 11 musicians, but he was trying to capture that vibe. And what kind of songs do you get? You get songs like I Get a Kick Out of You, the Cole Porter song, Little Girl Blue. He does a beautiful version of Little Girl Blue. Violets for Your Verse. My favorite song on this one, I am tempted to say Foggy Day. I love that one. But Sinatra doing My Funny Valentine, Sweet Funny Valentine. That with his timbre and his tone and that controlled voice, it is of pure loving beauty. At number 7, Songs for Young Lovers. At number 6, I always figured this was a somewhat odd collaboration, but I've always loved it. It is Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim, titled Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim. Now, this was at a time in which bossa nova was becoming bigger and bigger. So what did Sinatra do? He recorded a bossa nova album, and not all are typical bossa nova songs, but then again, it opens with The Girl from Ipanema. And honestly, I think that version is better than the original. I think Sinatra with his warm, smooth, convinced voice, singing about that girl, there is a certain longing, a certain desire, and also a certain coolness that, although the original track is also incredible, the identity of what it feels like changed. This record is pretty fresh. It has great songs. It has some great stories to go by as well. At this year, this record was nominated for Best Grammy, and Sinatra won the Grammy for Best Album the years before that, but they actually lost the Grammy to Sgt. Pepper's. Another interesting thing is that Jobim waited with the recording of this record because Sinatra was on a holiday, but this was a very necessary holiday because he needed a break, a much needed break from Mia Farrow, so he could come back all calm and relaxed. At number 6, Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim. At number 5, Frank Sinatra sings For Only the Lonely. At number 5. Now, Sinatra stated that this 1958 record was his own personal favorite. As a matter of fact, he said that even in the 70s, and without a doubt that this was, for him, his favorite record. The mood is somewhat darker. I think this works and sets pretty well next to something like No One Cares. But there's something about this record that is mythical, mystical. There are some great tracks on here. Only the Lonely, Angel Eyes, It's a Lonesome Old Town, Goodbye, Willow Weep for Me, Blues in the Night, Gone with the Wind, Guess I'll Hang My Tears Out to Dry. Arranged and conducted by Nelson Riddle, one of his long-time frequent collaborators. This record is gorgeous. At number 5, Frank Sinatra sings For Only the Lonely. At number 4, much more up-tempo. And the strange thing is, when you put this record on, this is an original British pressing, I believe, from 1956, it still sounds hip and up-tempo, friendly, jazzy. Rolling Stone magazine, when they made their list of the 500 best albums of all time, put this record at 306. And this is such a beautiful, bright, up-tempo Sinatra. My guess is, if you haven't heard it yet, you're gonna love it. Now, I can say a lot of things about the mood and the tone, but this is one of those records, if I just read out loud the track list here, you'd want to buy it. Opening with You Make Me Feel So Young, It Happened in Monterey, You're Getting to Be a Habit with Me, You Brought a New Kind of Love to Me, Too Marvelous for Words, Old Devil Moon, Pennies from Heaven, Love Is Here to Stay, I've Got You Under My Skin, I've Thought About You, We'll Be Together Again, Making Whoopee. I have a very ambiguous relationship with that track. I think it's meant tongue-in-cheek, I know, but does it fully work tongue-in-cheek? Yet again, when I hear it, I'm talking about it, I'm a bit like, whew, Frank. But listening to it, I find it funny and amusing. Swinging Down the Lane, Anything Goes, How About You? So many hit songs, so many jazz classics or vocal jazz classics. At number 4, Songs for Swinging Lovers. At number 3, I'm going to put a live album in here. This, to me, if you are new to Frank Sinatra, and as a matter of fact, I had a phone call with my father a week ago, and he said, out of the blue, and he never listened to jazz at all, he said, I'm starting to grow into Frank Sinatra, so I'm trying to find this album, because if he's getting hooked into Sinatra, this may be the album to take it to the next level, or the first level, as a matter of fact. It is Sinatra at the Sands. Now, this record was recorded at the Copa Room in the Sands Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. And his collaborators here are with Count Basie and his orchestra, and it's arranged and conducted by Quincy Jones. I mean, the atomic Count Basie and Quincy, Thriller, Off the Wall, so many other records that he produced. Quincy Jones. Now this is a setup for a success, because what you get is a live recording at the casino, at the hotel, and you have that sense of Sinatra being there, being the grand performer. And there's actually a set on side 2, the tea break, which is a monologue, in which he is just joking around. He's joking around about the alcohol habits of Dean Martin, about Sammy Davis Jr.'s book, his autobiography. He was fooling around and making jokes about it. He was making jokes about his own weight. Yeah. And the thing is, you get this tone, this element of people sitting there in dresses, fancy dresses, cocktails with little olives being served, and everybody focused on that one charismatic man who tells stories, who is of good wit. I mean, he's a funny guy. And not only is he a funny, charming entertainer, he'll bring you songs like, opening with "Come Fly With Me," "I've Got a Crush on You," "I've Got You Under My Skin." You get "Fly Me to the Moon." You get "You Make Me Feel So Young." You get "September of My Years," "Get Me to the Church on Time," "It Was a Very Good Year." You get "Making Whoopee." You get "My Kind of Town." Wow. So many stunning songs. Whenever I have friends over and the evening is getting darker and later, and the drinks are getting heavier on the alcohol, then you do want the vibe to keep going, but you don't want to push with hard rock or over pushing the energy, but you want to keep that good, nice atmosphere of being chill and funny. And I put this one on because whenever I do that, people are still, oh yeah, it's getting late, but we are still in the right vibe with Sinatra at the Sands. At number 3. At number 2, Watertown. This is a 1970 record by Frank Sinatra that was a big failure at the time of its release. Sinatra changed paths. I wouldn't call this vocal jazz anymore. As a matter of fact, I did a top 25 video about the best vocal jazz albums, and this one isn't even in there, because Sinatra noticed that the jazz world was changing. So he started to work with pop writers. But he did give them an assignment. He wanted it to be a concept album. A concept album about a breakup, about a couple leaving each other, and what do you do with the family and with the children? And this record is written so phenomenally well that there are songs that make you part of the heartache and very specific moments. Like the record opens with the two of them sitting at a table, and Sinatra explains that he has the idea that she's going to suggest to make another start. She looks at me across the table and silently says goodbye. Heartbreaking. And then a song about the children, the boys, and what they remind him of. And he reminds him of her. It is so tragically and perfectly written. And Sinatra seems to have this deep understanding of the subject. He really knows how to carry this record. This is a lost masterpiece. You don't come across one that often because it wasn't sold that much back then. But if you do, if you find a copy of this, even for people who do not really appreciate Frank Sinatra, I say buy it, because this will draw you in. The narrative, the writing, the vocals. It's a beautiful way to step into the world of Frank Sinatra, though it is a hidden gem. At number 2, Watertown. At number 1, what else then in the wee small hours of the morning? It is 1955, and starting with the early 50s, Sinatra's career was kind of in the decline. Also, he had some relationship issues, and Sinatra took it all very, very hard. What did he do? He made a concept album. One of the records that sets mood, tone so perfectly in one of the most astonishingly sounding productions that the world has ever heard. B.B. King said that every morning when he woke up, he would listen to In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning, and that inspired him to make music. I could go through the tracks. I mean, you got songs like Mood Indigo, Glad to Be Unhappy, I Get Along Without You Very Well, Last Night When We Were Young. Great songs. But when I was talking about songs for swinging lovers, I was mostly picking out specific songs which made the record. This is one of those records. Actually, like Pink Floyd's The Wall, or that in its entirety, in its tone, in its storytelling, in the heartbrokenness of the vocal, really get you. A gorgeous masterpiece. At number 1, In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. So here it is, my top 10 of Frank Sinatra albums. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.